Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. I've decided I'm going to start learning another programming language called Ballerina. Now what's really cool about Ballerina is that the purpose of Ballerina is to create a language that's sort of built for working with like cloud infrastructure and the web. Essentially a language designed for sort of back-end stuff. So a lot of the way it's worded and the tools that it gives you are for connecting to servers, making API endpoints, connecting to your cloud resources. It's basically designed with that in mind. So basically, you're programming some server that's going to end up getting deployed on like an Amazon Web Services, and you're calling for sort of the different things that you have going on Amazon Web Services. It's really designed with that in mind. So it's designed for sort of the modern back-end design, which is really cool. So I'm learning. I literally just started this morning. So what I'm going to do is that it has. Let me actually go to the. Where is it? It's like. Well, I'll go through this first example. Okay, the hello world example. Just walk through the code and then we'll run the code. Let me clear my terminal. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. Okay, you're importing different standard libraries. So there's a standard Ballerina HTTP library and input-output library. Okay, and then there are basically different categories in Ballerina: service, resource, client, and a service is essentially the actual like microservice you're creating. So this is the process, the server that's running on a particular port. So you're saying, hey, we're going to create a service called hello, and it's on a new listener, so a new HTTP listener that's coming from the HTTP library. So that's why we get the colon. It's from the HTTP library, and the function is called listener, and it's on port 9090. So then we wrap that service in curly brackets. So basically, what this service does is within these curly brackets. So basically, creating a server on those curly brackets. Okay, these are just some comments, and just so we can understand, the caller represents the client who's making the request. So this is my browser making a request to the, and then the request is, like if you're used to any back-end design, it's the details of the request coming in. Okay, so then we create a resource function. Okay, we're specifying a resource in the sense that this is going to be an API endpoint, so you'll be able to get to here via a URL. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, and this function is called say hello, so that becomes the endpoint. The service is the first part of the endpoint, so we have a service on hello/hello, and then we're running a function on that endpoint called say hello. So you're not creating endpoints; they're essentially services and then functions, and that's how you determine sort of what the endpoint's going to be. And now we pass a function into it. It always takes two arguments in the resource: the caller and the request. Okay. Cool. So then here what we do is we say, this I'm assuming is checking to see if there's an error. So I'll have to come back and to that syntax. But what this is basically doing is just saying that the result of this function equals something being sent from the caller to the respond. So this is actually the caller class invoking the function respond. So it's responding with the text hello ballerina. Now, if there's an error, it might end up in here. So I guess what this means is that it may have an error. So it's typing it, saying, okay, this variable should hold an error, maybe. So basically, this will return nothing if it's not an error. It will return an error if it is an error. And then what this does is check to see if result did end up retaining an error, and if it does, it prints error responding results. So and again, I haven't even read the documentation yet, and the syntax is actually fairly straightforward to read. I mean, this is a lot like PHP and calling the function of a class. So I'm just realizing like we're invoking the respond method of the caller object that gets passed in. And again, you see it's being typed. So we have typed, everything's being typed. But it's from what I was reading, from what I had read so far, is that it's kind of like a soft typing. I think the typing goes sort of one direction. It's you less worry about what's coming in, more worry about typing the stuff that's going out. So that way you get sort of the benefits of typing without the struggles of typing when it comes to sort of a network application, where typing can really make you have to type in a lot of extra code to create, situations for anything that the user can give you. Okay, so let's run this code. So I installed Ballerina yesterday. The instructions to install Ballerina are on the Ballerina website. So you know you're running it if you can type in Ballerina dash, I think it's dash version. Nope, I think it's Ballerina version. Ballerina version. There you go. Okay, so I'm running that version. Okay, and this does run in the Java virtual machine. Okay, so you do need to have Java installed. I'm not sure if it installs it with it, but I do have JRE 11.07. It's going to complain about it, you'll see. But Ballerina run, so that's to run the file. And the file is test.bal, so bal for Ballerina. So if I run the file, there it's compiling it. See, it's complaining about my Java version. But then it works. So you see here saying it started an HTTP write service listener or web service listener on 0.0.090. So we'll head over to that URL. You could also just use localhost. Okay, now if I go back over here and see, this is how the URL ends up being. So see, it says hello, that's the name of the service, and then say hello is the function that we're invoking on it. Neat. So if I were to go over here, and let's just add another function. So let's say I were to create another function, so I'll just copy the syntax. And I were to say call this cheese. Okay. End result, call or respond. Just respond with Gouda. And that's fine otherwise. I'll restart the server. I go back over here. I can now change this endpoint to cheese. Hello cheese. And I get Gouda. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. That's not bad at all. Now there's other syntax. So that's just for creating a service. There's other things you can do, and there's other versions of the Hello World program depending on what you're doing. So there's actually a cool section called Ballerina by example. So let me go find that. Ballerina by example. So we just went over the Hello World service. Okay. Essentially that's what we did. Okay. Now what we'll do is let's go over the Hello World main. Okay. And this is just basically standard coding at this point. So let me so this is not going to be anything super fancy. So let me copy all this over. Okay. And it's just a normal, like, run-of-the-mill kind of program where it starts with a main function. And then here you have to bring in the IO library. So basically their equivalent to sort of print is the IO library has a function called println. Okay, nothing too crazy there. And it prints hello world to the console. So let's run that function. And see, it runs hello world. Okay, so if you're just trying to do sort of a basic function, that's how you would do that. Or a basic program. Okay, cool. Now let's do a hello world parallel. Okay, so this is what it does is now we're creating service workers that can work at the same time. Okay, let's walk through this code. So again, we have our public function main. That's where the program starts. Okay, and basically we're saying at strand thread any. Okay, let's come back to this. So it's saying, hey, you can assign this to any thread. Okay, so we're creating a new thread, so that way you have, so basically creating multiple asynchronous operations going on at the same time instead of just one process like in JavaScript. So when you're using Node, every time you run a script, just one process is running, and you can create like child processes. Here we're creating lots of different threads that are doing different things. Okay, and you see each one's bringing print. So we're creating a new worker called W1. And worker 1 does this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some commands to this. Okay. And this will just say, I'm worker 1. I am worker 1. I am worker 2. I am worker 3. Okay, but again, all three of these are running at the same time, so they should all kind of print So Ballerina Run Test. Yep, let's do that. And there you go. Let's take a look what happened. See, first it runs the first command because they're running asynchronously, and then the second command for each one runs because they're all sort of running. Okay, so it's kind of shifting between. So it's saying, hey, first one does a thing, second one does a thing, third one does a thing, second one does the next thing, and you're creating these sort of parallel processes. Okay, web workers. So that's pretty easy if you're trying to do like syntax for if you want to work with service workers, where in other languages like JavaScript, working with web workers and having these parallel processes can be quite tedious. Okay, but that's sort of that deal. Okay, so again, this decorator creates a new thread and assigns it. Okay, so you can just assign this to any thread. And then this creates a worker and tells it to do stuff. Okay, there's one more. Here's the sequence stands that is executed concurrently with all the workers in the function. And then hello world parallel, hello world client. That's the last hello world. Okay. So here we're bringing back the HTTP library, and here we're bringing the IO library. Okay, so basically here we have a public function main that returns a tainted error. I'm not sure what this untainted decorator does, so we'll come back to that. But we're creating we're saying that we're creating a variable code that's an HTTP client. So again, represents someone looking to get information. So client EP equals new. Okay, so this is basically saying, hey, we're a new connection to this website. Okay, to this URL. So this allows you to pull information from another website. Okay, so then we're going to say, hey, we want a response. So we're creating a response object saying, hey, go to the website that we created in this client EP variable and do a GET request to this endpoint. Okay, and that puts in this variable here. And then we're going to go get the payload, because again, we're just getting the raw data from that request. So then what this does is goes and converts that into text. Okay, from the response. So it says check, they do this thing. Okay, so I'm assuming check means do this, take what this statement returns, put it in here. Essentially what I'm doing is like run this thing. So that should be a string variable. So we'll see we typed it as string, so it's being typed. And then IO print line, we're just printing the payload. So when I do that, let's run that code. I'm assuming that's going to end up being hello world. And it gets back hello world. Okay, so let's try a different URL. Let's try JSON placeholder. JSON placeholder. Okay, so let's try jsonplaceholder.com as the core URL. And then let's try this endpoint /post1. And I wonder how this comes back. So just print out the JSON object as a string. Let's see. Yep. Okay, and see it prints out the data. So this is essentially how you would go get data, but you create that core client object, and then from that client object you can go basically make requests and get responses. Just in the syntax. That's not so bad. And you don't have to do this over again. You're just saying, hey, I want to get to this particular endpoint, and I'm sure posts are probably a little bit more verbose because you got to specify some other things like headers, but that's the basic idea. So those are the 4 hello world scripts that are inside Ballerina. Okay, in Ballerina by example, but I think that's kind of instructive of how the language is set up. And you see there's a lot of these Ballerina by example things. So we'll go through those together one by one in these videos. So my name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Have a great day and enjoy.